Welcome to the Chicago Home Partner Podcast. I am your host, Amanda McMillan. Join us each episode as I have experts in all of the different fields of Chicago real estate as we unpack and digest what's actually happening out there.
We are back, episode 23. I can't believe we are almost to a full 24 episodes. I am excited to be back with Matt Dollinger again, back by popular demand. The questions came flooding in after he was here last time. So, Matt, thank you for coming back.
I love being here. This is fun.
I think that was dripping with sarcasm, but I'm going to keep running with it.
No, I like, you know me, anytime I get to be in front of the camera, I'm gonna milk it.
Once again, if people knew us 23 years ago and they were going to say who would be the in front of camera person and who would be the behind camera person, nobody would have put a money bet on me being in front of the camera.
No one would have said you were Tony Stark.
100%. Anyway,
Pepper Potts, you got it, but not Tony Stark.
No. First and foremost, last episode, we did not get a chance to dive into your illustrious coaching career. Now, in the words of the great Northwest suburban agent, Steve McEwen, hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
He will go on record to say that Matt Dollinger is the greatest real estate coach that ever lived and coached him.
Right.
So having been involved in so many real estate careers during that time, why do you think so many agents fail and so few succeed?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. And thank you that if Steve's watching. Hey, buddy, how are you? I think one of the biggest things is that this is a self-starting job. Like, you need to be driven to succeed. It's not like somebody's going to hold your hand and hold you accountable and everything along those lines. It's off to the races. You know, it's not like, I remember when my first got out of high school or college rather, and I had my short stint with the Nature Conservancy and found out that I wasn't going to be a park ranger because I couldn't make any money in it in life and whatever, whatnot. I was courted by a guy from New York Life, and he was going to like bring me under his wing and all this. I'm like, so where do I get you're just going to give me clients? And he's like, oh, no. I'm like, oh, I'd be really good if you just give me clients. But I think that self-starter mentality is the hard part. I think when you look past that, like, you need to have income to start with. Like, you have to be sitting here going, oh, you need to have back in the day, we used to say, like, you have to have 6 months of reserves to start in the business.
Or the ability to live very lean.
Right.
We did.
Which we were great at. Being poor, like, back in the day was like, we were really, really good at that.
It was fun.
We were good at that. But, you know, you need to have all of these things, and you need to be a driver personality. You need to take advantage of these things. And a lot of people just aren't that way. You know, they're not wired that way. I'm not really even wired that way. I have to force myself to be that way, where you're that way naturally. I think the biggest difference, though, that I see with regards to agents who are super, super successful and those that either are moderately successful or don't, or end up getting out of the business, can be boiled down to a couple of things. Number one is the drive. You know, you're there, you gotta be willing to work the hours, really commit to it. And, you know, for very little reward or anything to start with. And sometimes no reward, you know, there's how many clients have you worked with that have ended up changing their minds or not doing something. And you're like sitting here going, oh, I just put in 45 hours of work and I'm not going to get paid for this.
6 hours of something or 6 years of my life.
Right. Exactly. I think the other one is that there needs to be this blend, this very good balance. And I think, like, when I look at you, and I know you best, but I want to look at you and some of the other top agents that are out there, they're really, really good at their jobs. There's this balance of like analytic and empathy that has to come in to the job. And empathy because this is something that you are going to get personal, like, with people to a level that not many other people are. Like, it's like full Monty, pull the covers off. You know, you and Dan know things that people never, it's like.
I know about more babies coming before families even do, to be completely honest and transparent.
I wasn't even going that way. I was going more financially and things like that. But yes, you probably know this stuff as well. But this empathetic aspect is that this is a place this is a home. It's not just a house. It's a home. And I know that we ended up like making this out to be like it's an investment, it's a buy, it's a huge financial investment and everything like that. But it's more than that. It's like it's a home, and there's this this empathy that has to come in here. It's like you're not going to get everything you want. If you're working on a budget, you're not going to get the 2,000 square foot Victorian home in Lincoln Square with a double wide lot and things like that. You're going to have to give on some of these things, and you're going to have to tell people like this is okay. Make them feel okay with it. People are going to lose out on homes. They're not going to be able to afford what they want. This empathy that really, I think, is super important to make people feel good and, feel like they're succeeding. The analytic aspect is that the number one thing that I think that you guys really bring to the table is the negotiation and the steering of the transaction. The analytic, it's knowing the market, knowing the pricing, knowing all of this stuff, that it's imperative. It's knowing how to actually get from an offer to the closing line with all of the fires and all the stuff that actually pop up at the meantime. And so when you take a look at this, it's like, this is not a common personality trait, like a driver empathetic analytic. That's not something that when you do your DISC profile, it's not something, that's really there. I mean, what do you think?
A little bit like this. No, I think you hit on so many great topics, right? The reality is from start to finish, and that could be a 90-day process, that could be a 9-year process. We get into the lives of people, right? If we're really doing our jobs well, we are part of that world and able to really steer the ship in the right direction and do so to help those people. We are celebrating the wins. We are feeling the losses. I always joke and say when I first got into the business, one of my mentors, Dave Hanna, told me, you got to learn not to take things so personally, because I was erratic with emotion as I was kind of throwing myself into my clients' worlds. And it was something that I had to learn. His advice was I had to learn that it didn't need to weather me so much, right? I had to be able to turn those feelings into fuel for better agency. And that's what I've learned to do over the years. But the reality is I still have to really have and possess those traits that you said. So I think you nailed it right on, is that it's a very multifaceted person that is a little bit quirkily wound, right. That helps people to really navigate it in the best fashion possible.
And I think the last part about it is just, it's somebody who takes their job amazingly serious. Like they understand that this is not a transaction. You're not a lead. Somebody who is like really invested in making sure that these people are getting the right home, at the best dollar. And I think that all those things put together, it's like, some people have never had that experience, and so they don't know what they're missing. So there are agents out there who don't necessarily pull all these things together, who do well. But I think that if you boiled it down, those are probably the biggest things that when I see people who come in with those traits, those are going to be the most successful.
No, it makes sense. Now I'm going to go to another one of your skill sets. As somebody that runs an advertising company and understanding that the media and real estate have had a long-term love-hate relationship, what is it most important for consumers to know?
Media is not your friend. I mean,
dun, dun, dun.
I was trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what's the Jeff Bridges show that we watched back in the day that he was Newsroom. Was it Newsroom? But I remember that in one of the scenes in there, he actually goes in and they ran a story before they fact checked, right? And they were wrong. And they were so like broken about the fact that they ran this story and that it was incorrect and things along those lines. And honestly, like over the last 10 years, I think it's probably been the fast track is like facts don't really matter as much anymore. Okay.
Is that like fuzzy math?
Fuzzy math. Exactly. And I have a PhD in fuzzy math. But it's all about headlines. It's about clickbait. It's like, you read in this and you see that, I was looking at headlines the other day and it's like the big one on Forbes is that, more homes have experienced price reductions now than in the last 4 years. And it's like you read into the article and there's like 5 markets. They're all in California or Texas that they have experienced this. But it's like they don't go into the minutia. So when we're doing this, it's the consumer, when we're looking at this, and from an ad perspective, a consumer needs to understand that the headlines that are out there today are, as you said earlier in the last podcast, they're here to generate fear, or what did you say?
Excitement or fear?
Excitement or fear. And fear is even like anger at the same time. But so many of these things, it's like in even our local things here in Chicago, is people will talk about Chicago as a blanket statement. They won't get into like, oh, the north side or the south side or the west side or, whatever. No, it's like the 5-county area. And this is how they're reporting data. They're not as interested in getting down to the facts of the matter, but they're about generating those clicks, generating that stuff so that they can sell ad space on their site or in their, on their portal.
Everyone that has ever watched this podcast understands that I get on a little bit of a soapbox when it comes to the media, right? I appreciate that they do their job so well, but looking at it from a business and a marketing aspect, right? You own an advertising company. You have to understand that you need to make money for your clients. That's sure. You need engagement, and engagement the true story isn't always the one that gets the most engagement. And I always say the media isn't here to lie or misrepresent, but they may tell a little version of the story. They may tell a little something that, you know what? I always joke and say an article comes out, somebody reads it, they call me up and they said, oh my God, did you see what Crane's business just released this story? And I said, I did. I read it. Did you? They said, no, but I read the headline. And I said, read the article and then call me back, because the truth comes out in the end, but you have to understand that they're trying to capture your interest. Once again, we've talked about this before, so that they can sell ad space and they can become profitable.
I think the one thing, though, that has to be taken into consideration is it's not all the media's fault. If you go in to look at, like, go to YouTube, you type in real estate, and you find the ones that have the highest clicks, the highest views, every one of them is doom and gloom. There are pictures of atom bomb clouds going off, the melting of real estate, the REO market is here again, blah, blah, blah. And it's not, you're playing to the audience, but we have become this like entertainment, quickly give me, I don't want to read anything type of civilization that needs to be entertained by this. So we can point our fingers at the media all we want. The thing is, it's like, are you not entertained, at the same time? So
you're basically saying it's self-induced and we are a clickbait generation.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think that's honestly, it's like when we talked about starting your podcast, it's like we've had people over and over, people who said, oh, you got to change your content. You got to make this, you got to make it more flashy and wowed and things like that. And I mean, true to form, 2 years into it, we haven't pivoted the course. And I think it's like, I think it's something to be really proud of, that you are the voice of not only truth and insight into the world of real estate in Chicago, but it's like you haven't deviated for clicks or likes or something like that.
As I've always said, I'd rather have the good, real, honest information for a small amount of people than all the viewers of the world and selling out what we believe in.
I agree.
So in advance of our next guest, I'm really looking forward to unwrapping a whole lot of Chicago public school confusion. That being said, I know that you, in addition to being a modern day real estate renaissance man, are also a proud city parent that is invested in staying relevant in the city and enjoying the city as it is. What are some of your tricks for raising kids in the city?
Teach them early not to be dumb. Honestly, though, it's like you have those conversations. And I think that, looking back to my childhood, I had a neighbor who kind of taught me all these things. Like, don't get into the car with the guy with the white van with, free puppies painted on the side. It's like you have to have those conversations. You're careful about it. But
so free candy is okay, but not the free puppies van.
Free candy, because if you come to our house for Halloween, we give out epic candy and have a good time doing it. In fact, we did s'mores last year, which was pretty amazing. But I mean, honestly, it's like, I think a lot of these parents they want their kids to believe they're living in these bubbles, and being kind of aware of like the fact of like, hey, here's the realization. If you ask my kids, like
I was going to say, all of your kids, are there more than the ones I know of?
No, but there's some with 4 legs and some with 2.
Fair point.
But you ask my kids, like they're like, if I said, what do I say about all drivers? They're going to reply back with, all drivers are idiots. And I'm like, exactly. This is what I want my kids to know. Is like every time they go to a stop sign, that guy is going to run the stop sign. But anyway, I don't think that's really the question you're looking to get here.
I don't want parental advice.
Okay, not
I
parental.
want to know how do you create awesomeness in your kid's life in the city?
For sure. Couple of quick tips, like specific things. Chicago Park District is probably the most underutilized entity in the city of Chicago, I think, with most parents. Some parents got it. They're going to be looking at this right now and saying, oh, well, obviously, whatever. But, we were a little late to the game. And when we saw what was there, it was absolutely amazing. You've got the summer camps, which any of you parents who are out there right now, who your kids are either finishing summer camp or whatever, you look back at these last couple of months, you're like, that was a godsend. It was amazing. I shipped them off for 6 hours a day and they didn't have, I didn't have to take care of them. Summer camps were amazing.
Well, and I think the point to note about the summer camps, especially, and the park district in general, is that it's an incredibly economical option for city parents because so many things in the city cost a premium.
When you take a look at like that compared to like an IK Gymnastics or Windy City Ninjas or something like that, we're talking about $600 a week versus, $200 for the course of the summer. It's really amazing. And I love the fact that they have that set up like that. So that's one of them. Number two, specifically, McFetrich Sports Center, I think is like amazing. You've got a park, you've got outdoor tennis courts, you've got indoor tennis courts, you've got pickleball, you've got open skate, you've got learn to skate, ballet, everything along those lines. The skating things, obviously, as a former hockey player and the dad of a hockey player and a figure skater now, to my chagrin. McFetrich is amazing. I mean, you can go, where else can you go for $6? You skate for 2 hours in the afternoon in the middle of the summer. It's amazing. Clark Park, which is down, it's the little street that goes right behind DePaul College Prep off of Belmont there. That's the BMX track.
By the river.
Yes, by the river. It's the BMX track. You can go there. You can literally ride from Belmont to Montrose now on the Riverwalk and everything like that. It's safe. There aren't cars. It's the whole 9 yards. That's amazing. But also just south of the boathouse is this little BMX track called Clark Park. It's got a pump track for little kids. It's awesome. My girls have a phenomenal time going there. I think that's one of my most fun things to do with them. And I think that, I'm very conflicted in this, but the bike lanes in Chicago, if you're a biking family and you've got smaller kids, I mean, I'm not taking them on Belmont. I think that's just absolutely crazy. But a lot of the shared lanes and things along those lines, I feel totally comfortable taking the girls there. We can go to, camp, we can go to school, we can do all this other stuff.
I'm going to jump in here because I can't believe you've gone through all these great things and you haven't mentioned the park district pools yet.
I was going there, but I appreciate you jumping in and reminding me.
That's what I do.
Right, exactly. You keep me in.
I steal the punchline.
No, but it's great. I mean, I was not knowledgeable enough about these pools. And then my kids started going there for summer camp and we went to Holstein Pool. It's amazing. It's like awesome. And it's cut into these little hour-and-a-half long segments. So you don't have to be the bad guy when the lifeguards blow the whistle and kick everybody off. I mean, you better have at least $10 in your pocket to go to the ice cream guys who are hanging out, lurking at the exit because they're smart and they know exactly when those kids get out. But it's amazing. Like all those parks across the school, all the swimming pools across the city, they're awesome. They're just such a great opportunity. They're free.
And I think that's such an important note, right? There have definitely been some clubs that have opened up in the city that are very popular and very pricey, but just understanding that, you can take your kids to the pool, have a pool environment, enjoy, have fun, summer fun, and yet it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I think I think a lot of people have anxiety about the cost of raising kids in the city just because everything is more expensive. It just takes a little bit more work to navigate it.
Absolutely. And even taking the kids aside, I know Holstein every morning, I believe it's at from 7 to 8 or something like that. They have the lanes set up for parent swim. So if you want to go on and you can't afford to go to, Midtown or something like that, you can go to Holstein Park and you can swim your laps for free and you can go and do that. And it's amazing. So Chicago Park District, honestly, I think is probably the most underrated underrated and underutilized thing that we've got in the city for being having fun with kids and just enjoying overall.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it, obviously for a multitude of reasons. I know our viewers really appreciate it. Once again, you are always so much information and so much great content. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and hopefully you'll come back soon.
I'll see you at dinner.
Okay, now we have an absolute treat for you next. I am so grateful to have Michelle Sherman here with us. Now get this, one of the things that we get hammered with questions has to do with schools. It's such an important driver in the real estate process for a lot of our consumers. So Michelle is one of the most greatest people to talk about on the subject. Michelle is an employee of CPS, Chicago Public Schools, and she has the most interesting role, in my opinion. She is a parent resource coordinator at Pulaski Elementary. In addition to this skill set, she has successfully, or at least to the high school level, navigated the CPS system on a personal level as well. First and foremost, Michelle, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's doing the school tours. It's the school where I work. It's fun to talk about the whole process and learn about it. And I like to jump in and learn about it too.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, before we get into the process, I need to know a little bit more. Parent resource coordinator. Tell me a little bit about your role.
That was a role that was there before I stepped into it at our school. It's kind of the person that I'll do any random job that comes my way, helps keep the boat afloat. What do they need that day? Someone in the classroom, or, what job can I take on that will help the school to tick?
Do all of the schools have that person? Because it seems like you would kind of do it all.
They do not. Not
Okay.
every school has a parent resource coordinator, so we're lucky.
Note to self, Pulaski Elementary, which is probably one of our more popular elementary schools to begin with, and middle schools, has this additional role to really support not only the school, but the parents as well.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to start with the very, very basics because CPS is very overwhelming. I'm a CPS parent, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm so excited to have somebody else kind of come and share my passion. What makes up the district of CPS, Chicago Public Schools?
There's different districts. So there's different networks too.
Okay.
So Pulaski is in network 6. So you have someone that oversees network 6. So there's, I think, 13 different networks.
Okay.
And so altogether, we have over 300,000 students in CPS.
Wow.
And
And how many schools approximately?
299.
Okay, fantastic. That's a lot. And we have a big joke in real estate, right? Because CPS has the real estate code used of 299. Now, as an agent, if they don't know all the specific schools that go in for a neighborhood school, they just put in that district for all the districts.
Right.
So we can get ourselves in a little bit of confusion from that right off the bat. So one of the things that I have really grown to love and appreciate about the way our school systems are is the fact that you have so many different schools that cater to specific needs and programs and everything like that. Now, because I understand it, I appreciate it. Most of our consumers don't understand it, so it produces anxiety and concern. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of schools and programs we have?
We have charter schools, which are run a little bit differently than your typical CPS schools, still CPS, but the financing is a little bit different for those schools. The process is still through go.cps.edu to apply for that school. Now, magnet school is, let's say the school has something of interest to you. You don't live in that neighborhood, so you want to get into that school. So we can talk about all of the application process, but you would have to apply for that school if you choose to go there.
Okay.
And then the neighborhood boundary school, or a zone school, they might call it.
Okay.
You can go to the CPS school locator and put in your address, and it will, that's through cps.edu. You go to the school locator, put in your address, and it will tell you what your local elementary school and local high school will be.
Sure.
Not preschool, because that's a different process too. Selective enrollment could be a regional gifted center of some sort, and then you would want to apply, and there's a test that you would need to take and make a certain score to get into those schools. That's also the gifted programs are all a part of that. Selective
Sure. So if I'm hearing you correctly, right? Just like any other area, we have the neighborhood boundary. You live in the area, you can show up at the school, they have to let you in no
Yes.
matter what. We have then, I'm going to bring up that scary word, lotteries, which I know
Yes.
we're going to get more into
Yes.
later on, but you have schools that you can either test into or apply into getting into those schools as
Yes.
well. But these are all different facets of CPS. And, you know, as I said, one of the things that I love about it is that we have a little bit of this flexibility that perhaps somebody that just moves to the suburbs to go to the school, their options are much smaller.
Right.
than
You're
we
going to
have.
find something that might suit your child's needs, or that you know your child best, right? So you're going to find something that you think would work best for them.
No, for certain. And to me, this is the point that I keep coming back to. And I can't tell you how many times that I have parents that absolutely insist on going to one school. And the reality is if you absolutely are going to insist on only one school in the city, the best way to get into it is to move into that neighborhood, right? That's always going to be the case. But I've had parents that have painstakingly done that and paid absolute premiums for a housing stock there, that then get their kids into the school and realize that maybe it's not the right program for their children. And so that it's interesting. I look at the CPS system as having the flexibility to cater to so many different students in so many different capacities versus just, you're going to go here and you're going to stay here until your schooling's done.
Right. It seems like more of what I grew up with. But we do have these really great options, and being a parent too, I feel so lucky for these options for my children.
Okay, so we started to navigate into this next question, but just to really make it clear, how can a parent figure out what schools their children are eligible for?
Again, can start at cps.edu and do the school locator. That'll tell you your zone school. Then take it from there. And there's videos on cps.edu. There are great videos on go.cps.edu. So watch the videos, take the time, and then start to go on the school tours. Don't wait till the last minute to go on the school tours. Don't make yourself a frazzled mess. There's time. Our school offers, I think, 12 to 16, depending on demand, tours per year. So take them early. Go the year before. Don't put yourself in that situation.
No, that's great. And I think, understanding that the neighborhood boundary is a piece, understanding that once again, I know selective enrollment, that was one that was a little bit surprising for me to navigate because that has a testing component to it.
It does.
Now, I remember laughing because we tested my oldest daughter when she was in kindergarten. I remember asking the questions, partly for real estate knowledge and partly for parental knowledge. I would ask all of the teachers, right, the pre-K teachers, what to expect. What do they test a 4.5-year-old on? And they laughed with me. They all said the same thing. They said, we have no idea. They take them in there for about 2.5 minutes, and we've never seen consistency in the results. Now, I can tell you personally, I tell every one of my clients not to rely on selective enrollment in getting in. I thought my now 9-year-old was the brightest in our family, or the brightest of the two for certain. And I thought that she was really going to score well. And gosh, I don't even think that we hit mediocrity. And when we saw the scores at the end of the day, so that's especially at the younger ages, I think a lot of a crapshoot.
It's really hard because you're asking a child to go into a room with someone they don't know, and you don't know what the test is going to be exactly. So there's no preparing them. Sometimes it's hard for them to leave their parent to go do this small task.
But yeah, once again, coming back to real estate, anytime I have a client say, I want them to go to this selective enrollment school, I always say to them, well, I would have a plan B and a plan C. That's the best way to navigate to minimize anxiety.
And I think that's across the board, pre-K through high school.
For certain. Okay, now I'm gonna unwrap a topic that is a ton of anxiety and confusion for a lot of parents. It is the CPS lottery. What is it? What do we need to know? How do we navigate it?
So the lottery allows you, you can log into your CPS or go.cps.edu account. And that opens in September. It's open for 2 months. Don't wait till the last minute again with that, but take your tours, jump in, take those. But more importantly, if you're really interested in the school, go to local school council meetings for that school. Go to the Friends of meetings if they have a Friends of group. Get to know people, or go play at the playground after school. Get to know the community a little bit more, and that will be helpful more than like a 45-minute tour.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So, jump in a little bit more, get to know the personalities, see if they jive with you or your child. Again, don't get frazzled with all of this, because if you take your time, go in, set up your account, and if there are any glitches, you can reach out to someone. The Office of Access and Enrollment, who runs go.cps.edu, is fantastic about replying quickly, either by phone or by email. I have found them to be amazing. And then you can set up your account. You'll be ready to go. You can click the schools. You can make any change you want to your list in that 2 months until the deadline.
Okay, so I'm going to break this down for people that this is the first time they're ever learning anything about CPS. Technically, the lottery allows parents to try to get a lottery spot into a neighborhood school that they don't live in those boundaries now.
Yes.
A charter school.
Yes.
Or a magnet school.
Correct.
So selective enrollment, totally different. It's part of the lottery still, but you need to test into that aspect.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, you can apply to up to 26 schools.
It's 20 for choice.
And then
the
selective
selective enrollment.
Okay.
Correct.
So 20 schools that you could try and get into from that perspective. So all you need to do is spend that time knowing which 20 schools are going to be the most important to you.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I've always kind of talked about and noted over the years, the most popular schools tend to have the least amount of lottery spaces to fill.
That's correct.
So if you are very excited to go to, let's say, Lincoln Elementary, which is a very popular school, they probably don't have very many lottery spaces at the end of the year.
They do not. And I happen to know one person who did get one, and they were shocked. So,
For certain, 100%. So, I think that that's really an important part of it, of understanding, is being realistic in the schools that you're looking at. Now, I have personally and professionally worked throughout a lot of years of lottery systems with clients from that perspective and really understanding it. So I think the harder part comes, right? We pick our 20 choice schools, we pick our selective enrollment, we hit click on the button, and then it goes into the abyss of what we don't know.
Yes.
And we're just sitting waiting, right?
Yes.
So then what happens from there?
Well, and it's a learning process too. With selective enrollment, you do not want to choose a school that you do not want.
Yep.
Just because you're like, what's the selective enrollment? I should probably just choose it because I can choose 6.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right.
Because then when it comes to the wait list, you'll be bumped if you get any of those choices, even if it's your 6th choice, but you're like, I'm not sure if I really wanted to be there, and you get it, it bumps you from the wait list. So then
so
you'll
on
have
the selective enrollment, only put down the schools that you really would consider.
Yes.
going to.
No, you can go back in at a point and get onto the rolling wait list on that at a later point. But I would say select schools you really want, if you really want to be there.
So it's better to have less schools that are really pertinent to you than more.
I think so.
That's great advice for certain. Okay, so that I know we do these selections, and the years sometimes change. Sometimes it's due in November, and sometimes it's the beginning of December.
You never know.
It's a mystery.
It's been extended several times. I know a few years ago it was extended because I think CPS's their numbers after COVID were dropping a little bit. Mm-hmm. People were finding they could work from anywhere, so they were moving out of the state. And so they extended it because they wanted their numbers to go up a little bit more. But.
So then if I'm remembering correctly, and it's been some years since I've done this, fast forward, when do people get those results?
You will get your results for high school in, I think it was the end of March, last week of March. And then for elementary, it's 1 month later. So they came out a little bit earlier this year for both.
This is the part that people get nervous about, right? You get the results, and the results will say one of a few things. Either you didn't get into any of your choices, but here are your wait lists.
Yes.
Or you got into one, or maybe you got into a few, and you still, when you get into some, you still get where you're waitlisted on the others.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd say this is where people start to get nervous and saying, oh my God, what do I do next? How do I navigate this portion? Because for me, when I was a first-time parent, from the time we got our results to the time we made full decisions and the school year started, that's where I was so anxious.
I start to get a lot of emails after that comes out.
Right.
Because people are like, what now? What can you do for me? We cannot do anything. Unfortunately, we really can't. It's all through central office. So they alert our clerks, okay, here's the next in line. They alert the family when they get a spot, if they get off of the wait list. And you might even see yourself, go higher on the wait list because someone need-based may come into the mix or they may join the wait list or whatnot, and they're considered higher than you. So you were like, I was 20 yesterday. Why am I 27 today?
Yeah.
So that's a new thing that people are wondering, what's happening? So they reach out. You kind of just have to hold tight. You have to, know that it's a lot of different circumstances with who's going to say yes to some of these spots, or people have moved. I mean, I see it because I am dealing with enrollment at Pulaski too, as I'm dealing with all of the new parents coming in. So I see people drop off and that things can happen.
No, and I think, this is where I can really lean in on my personal. I know you probably remember the story. Even once my kids were in a school, I still would put myself out there just so that I could help to advise. I knew I wasn't going to take any slots. I always like to be able to advise to my clients on what I'm seeing in the lottery system. Now you're probably going, oh my God, Amanda, you're shirking the system now, but I'm not taking anyone's slots at the end of the day.
I don't think you'll be the first.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed is that I think if I remember correctly, you have 2 weeks to confirm the initial responses.
Right.
So if you got into 3 schools, you have to select one. Mm-hmm. And by selecting one, you take yourself out of the running with the other 2. They are not coming back at any chance at all. You're saying goodbye to those. So you choose your favorite one at that point in time.
That's correct.
Now, just because you choose one doesn't mean you're stuck with them, right? It means that you can still watch the other wait lists if you have a more preferred school that you're looking to go to.
Yes.
From that perspective. Yes. And that, for some people, they'll see that some schools will move very quickly. And I think when you see those wait lists, I know that I've been number 3 or 4 on a wait list of a very competitive school that I never got into, but I've been number 101 on a different school that saw a tremendous amount of movement moving forward.
That's absolutely true. So that can happen. And actually, I know for the high school level anyway, this year, they had bars that were like red, green, yellow, kind of like not much of a chance. It's maybe.
Yeah. Looking good.
Looking good. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's interesting to see. But it's interesting because you watch that. And then every time somebody says no in a slot, those numbers are constantly moving.
They're constantly
all moving. Summer long, we would get an update to say, hey, you've just been accepted into this school. Do you want that slot? And I think that was the hardest because those windows are only 48 hours.
Yes.
So you get that and then you're going, do I like this? Do I like this? What do I want to do? What do I want to do? But, once again, if you have your priorities and you know what you're looking for, you get there. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, you can get those notifications up to 2 weeks after the school year started.
You can.
Woo. I remember our kindergarten year, which was also the 2020 COVID year. We got into a school that we were very happy with, but it wasn't our number one choice. And a week after the school started, we got into our number one choice. And I tell you, I sat there and said, oh, we should take it. What if this opportunity doesn't come again? But then I thought it was the COVID year. They weren't in school. There was a lot of things going on. We had a pod set up and we just decided to stick with the school we were in and choose not to. But it's one of those things that those changes can happen from the time the information comes out until the school year starts.
They can. And it's hard because people, when they come out when the school year starts, people are like, do I want to move my child? Kids really go with the flow. They're great.
They're more resilient than we are.
They really are. And I always tell parents, I'm like, your child best, but it's harder for us as parents for the change. Kids adjust and they make new friends and they're fine.
Have you ever had somebody come to you and say, I haven't gotten into any of my lottery choices?
Yes. You just have to tell them to hold tight. And I also truly believe this. And I've been in the public school system for a long time, having a 17-year-old, and we've always done public school. The market changed right after we had our son. And so we stayed in the city. I saw a lot of people staying in the city. I am so impressed with local schools and the amount of parents that have just jumped in. And they're like, we're here. We have great voices. We have time. And they've just made there's so many great options because the parents have jumped in. We have great teachers. And the combo has just made for a lot of great places to educate your children.
I think, and I'm going to take this out on a tangent because I think you hit on something so important here, right? I've always said, I think the housing crisis really ended up at the end of the day benefiting our public school districts in a huge way because people got stuck, right? They couldn't move. Their homes were underwater. And if they were raising families in those areas, they had to invest in their schools. And I think our public schools took a giant leap forward because of that parental investment, people in the community saying, hey, we're going to demand more from you. We want more from our school. Now, myself as a city parent and a CPS parent, one of the things that I think is just amazing about our school districts, and trust me, we have a lot of great private options as well, not to neglect those today, but we're not talking about them. For me, one of the things that's most important is I love that our public school district teaches my kids lessons that I can't necessarily teach them at home. There is an element to the reality of living in the city with a tremendous amount of socioeconomic change. They see everything under the sun. And I love the fact that I feel like CPS is helping me to raise good humans.
I say that on almost every school tour. And I also say that about our school in general, is that I feel like it's about producing good humans and not robotic, test takers. It's just a good combo mix of, we want bright kids, but we also want good humans that's what's going to change the world. So, and I feel like you find that with CPS students. I'm just in awe of so many at our school and at all the schools that I see.
100%. It's such an important topic to me. Okay, I'm going to deviate a little bit here. We've kind of neglected our early learning pre-K systems, and I know a lot of people have questions on it. Is this the same lottery system?
Yes. So it's through Chicago Early Learning. If you go to cps.edu and you press on the pre-K button, again, use these websites. Use them. Just don't, if you're calling the schools, it's just easier if you use the website. So use those. It'll take you to Chicago Early Learning, and you'll apply in usually late April, third week to last week of April for that process. And then you'll find out within a month.
So is there anything that people need to know and understand about those pre-K options? Because I think the biggest confusion that I tend to see is that, people don't always understand. Not all schools have them, that some of them are half-day programs, some of them are full-day programs. Some of them actually have a little bit of a tuition basis too. So there's a lot to navigate in there.
Right.
Is there anything important for people to know?
As of this past year, I'll speak to that because I've watched all the changes through the years. When my boys were in preschool, it was 2.5 hours, and there was pay-based, depending on the paycheck you brought into the school, they would take it from there. And now there's so many full day, but those are for 4-year-olds for kindergarten readiness.
Okay.
Some of the schools do start at 3. Ours might take a random 3-year-old if they maybe have a speech need or some kind of need that they really need to be in a space at the preschool.
What would you say, and I think you mentioned at least, and I think you're going to probably go back to there, but what are the best resources for people trying to understand their public schooling options in Chicago, regardless of the age?
Go to the school's website, take a school tour. Bucktown has a great Bucktown community. They do a school night where they do all of the public and private schools together. They come together at one of the local schools, and then parents can come and talk to all those schools or follow them on social media. If you're in Ravenswood or Bucktown or whichever community it might be, follow them on Insta, and then you'll learn about the schools.
Our experience was a little tarnished because it was during COVID. But the school tours, I've always thought, are an incredibly beneficial way to really experience it, right? We can look at every website, we can digest everything, but I always felt as a parent, when I walked through the schools and I did the tours, I walked out of there with much stronger thoughts and visions on where I thought my kids were going to educate than I did before. If somebody's going on these tours, what do you recommend parents look for?
You want to see if they have classes or enrichment or before and after school or whatever might be best for your child. I mean, before and after school seems to be a big item these days with dual working parents, but what enrichments do they have? Or do they focus on music, or are they focused on math, science? What are you looking for? You have to decide what's best for your child as you know them the best. I always speak to the future of our school. We're an IB school, so an International Baccalaureate school. So that is so interesting to me. It's students do a lot of
explain, because a lot of our clients and a lot of our consumers aren't going to understand what is an IB program.
The students are learning, and there's all kinds of attributes they go by, like a risk taker or a listener, or they just have. It's just, again, making a well-rounded person, but that doesn't sit on something. They take action. If they see a problem, they want to discuss it. They want to do something about it and fix it. And they're just worldly thinkers. It's not about the small space that they're in. It's about the world in general and learning more about it. I loved this as a parent. It worked for us. Again, education is so personal. You'll know what works for you and your family. But it's worked well for us. It ties in, they also tie in a language, which is nice. But I speak to the future of Pulaski. We have great band programs. We have sports. We have a little bit of something for everyone. Do you want to take after school chess or music? We have it all there. So does that school have what your child needs or what you need for your life and work? Are you going to be able to get them to that enrichment program that's not on the campus after school?
No, and I think that you're kind of deviating into the next question, which is so relevant, right? I have so many people will come and say, okay, I've studied the test scores. I've studied the parent involvement. This school checks all of my boxes. But I think a lot of parents neglect to think about logistics, right? I think a lot of us forget CPS they don't all start at the same time, right? They don't all end at the same time. They don't all have before care and after care systems. They don't all have languages. Like there's so many logistical aspects of trying to figure it out. It's not that your child walks to the street, they get on a bus and go. There's how do we implement this school and the way that it runs into our lives as well?
Exactly. Or if you have multiple children. Right. So one's at a preschool here or daycare, and then you need to get this one here or another to high school and one to elementary school. So I'm always saying make your life as easy as you can because it's hard enough already.
Great advice.
Yes. This might be bad. This is my personal opinion. You don't have to commit to a school. If it doesn't work out for you, there really are a lot of good options. So it's not the end all be all of your life. If you're seeing it's not working for you or your child, there are options and there are good options. So if you need to change schools, your child will probably adjust and be fine.
No, and I love that you came back to that because that's what I said is always for me, one of the biggest benefits of CPS is if it's not working, you have a plethora of choices and options. Yeah. And that's for me, I laugh because I see so many people go to the suburbs because the ease and convenience of schooling, because they're intimidated by our process. But in reality, I believe that our process is more flexible and offers more opportunities for people to really curtail their education needs in a multitude of venues.
Well, I think it's grit. There's grit behind this Chicago public school system, and grit's just good in general in life.
No, for certain. Now, I want to end on this. You've been so gracious with your time, but this is something that we've neglected a little bit, and I know you're personally in the depths of. We've spent a lot of time talking about early learning, elementary, middle schools, because that's where a lot of our questions came in. But I do want to scratch the surface of high schools. What do parents of almost high school age kids need to understand about the entrance programs to get into these high schools?
Yes, we can talk about that. I don't know if you want me to go back to academic center at any point too, but for high school, the 7th grade grades matter. So what grades you make as your final grade. So from all 4 quarters, they'll run those. And then if you made it, all B's, then you're going to have a B for your final grade. So you take those grades. And then 8th grade, it's now in October. It used to be later. You'll take the high school entrance exam. So people might take prep classes. They might get a tutor. The schools might offer help themselves. And the teachers obviously have been teaching to what will be on these tests as well for over a year to the students as well. So they'll take the test and they'll take the score from that. And then the tier system comes into play as well. So there's 4 tiers depending on where you live. Again, when you do the school locator, that can help you define what tier you're in.
So just so I'm understanding correctly for the people listening, you automatically can go to your neighborhood school.
Correct.
But the reality is we know, and I do believe this is part of the housing crisis, is that we've had a lot of investment in our early learning, our elementary and our middle school, just because of ages. That's where the parent involvement has come. We're now seeing we're getting to a point past, 10 to 12 years past then, that those kids are going to high school and we're getting more of an involvement. But we do have a lot more highly respected elementary and middle schools than we do high schools on the public level.
Right, but it's really exciting for me to watch that change. And doing the school tours, everyone wants to know which selective enrollments did your kids get into. And it's not the end all be all, because some children are great writers, they're musicians, Shy Arts or some of these other schools might be better. Performance schools, Lincoln Park has a lot of performance options. And so that's just it. I'm going to throw a number out, but Lincoln Park might have 8 different ways you can get in. So people might just be like, it's Lincoln Park, and it's Lincoln Park. But there, there's music, there's all different ways you can get in. So theater, whatnot. Same with a lot of the schools. Even Von Steuben will have a couple of different ways to get in. There's just a lot of options that are going to suit your child's needs. Selective enrollment isn't for everyone. They're great options, but there's just so many other amazing options that I've watched come around that kids are so excited about.
And if I've heard one thing that you've come back on repeatedly, and it's one of my mantras in life, I always believe choices, options, and flexibility is how we navigate our obstacles in life, whether it's in our life, in our businesses, in our education, all of that. And that is what I think CPS really excels at. And I love the fact that as somebody that is so part of their system, you kind of brought that to us to understand is that as long as you have an open mindset, a few options, a little bit of flexibility, maybe a glass of 2 or wine here and there, then you're really able to navigate the system well.
You are.
Michelle, thank you so much for being here. I can't even believe all the great information that you shared with us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Until next time, Chicago.